Thank you everybody for being here. What did I tell you, Jerry?
Yeah, I heard that you had another speaker coming this morning.
No. Something like, if you build it, they will come. If you say yes, they will come. Yeah. How about, let's open with a quick word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you, Lord, for this day. Wow, this is just amazing. What a great turnout. Thank you, Lord, for sending these men here, guys who live close, guys who live far away. Holy cow, I can't believe the distance some of these guys have driven. So just thank you for your blessings. I'll be honored in this room this morning.
Yes.
And give us all safe travels on the way home. So forgive us for our sins. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. So I'm going to quick buzz through this. I know you're not here to listen to me. If you happen to notice, I'm going to start. Ariel's filming this. This will be out on the Cal's Corner Ministry website here in probably about 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And we're moving. Everything's kind of being channeled into Cal's Corner Ministries. So if you Google that, you can click on that. It's on YouTube. It's on Twitter.
Not on Twitter.
Not on Twitter. No. What are we on?
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and then you have YouTube, and then you have your website.
There we go.
Everything should be on the website.
You're doing it all too, aren't you?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's why I have her. Youth of America right there. So if you want it, so we're starting to film all these. All the podcasts, we're now up to about 23 podcasts, I think, that we've done. They're all going to be on that. Click on that. You'll just have to search. You can find them. We just did a great podcast, about 10 days ago with Mike Teeter, who played at University of Michigan, 7 years in the NFL. And that's actually going to be a 2-part podcast because his journey through college, through the NFL, faith, how they all wrapped in together. We just couldn't do it in one. It was a really good podcast, not because of me, because of Mike Teeter. So check that out. Once again, thank you to Ariel and Sherpa Leadership Groups, who she works for now, elevating your business, elevating stuff like this. Speaker in July, Demetrius Harris. Demetrius is not really a white name, is it? No, he's an African-American kid. He's from Muskegon. He played 4 years at Cornell, Ivy League graduated, and and then he played a year at Buffalo. Impressive young man, and I'm trying to get with him to sit down with him, and just so I can kind of hear his story more. So he should be in July. August will be Brian Elvey from Guiding Light. Next week, Saturday, June 21, Big Rapids Men's Ministry. If you're a baseball fan, Frank Tanana will be up there speaking. It's at Cranker's Restaurant Brewery. White Lake Men's Ministry, August 2nd. If you're in the political realm or if you like history, the great-grandson of Franklin Delano Roosevelt will be speaking in White Lake. The Roosevelts have a compound. If you go out the channel of White Lake and hang a left, there's a big compound there, and that's the Roosevelt compound. And it's his great-grandson will be in speaking. So he'll be up in August for a few weeks, so he said he would share. We've had guys come from a long ways today. I look around Caledonia. Chad was the first one here. He beats me here every time. I got no idea how he does that, but he comes from just south of Caledonia. We got a couple of guys from Holland, 3-4 guys from Holland, Grand Rapids. We have a guy from Elwell, Michigan, suburb of Alma.
He's from Illinois.
And I'm getting there. Lisa, relax. I'm getting there.
Trying to help you out.
We have a guy from Bloomington, Illinois.
Oh,
there you go.
Bloomington, Illinois. So how about this would be Larry's grandson, Andrew, correct?
Son.
Sean.
You're on your own, boo-boo.
I'm not that young. That's dangerous, dude. If I'm on my own, that's dangerous. So, all right, here we go. How many guys can say have actually flown in a Chinook helicopter? So I know I've been talking about Jerry for the last 5+ years. He's become a good friend of ours. Most of these guys here are our Tuesday night group. And we've all heard the stories. You've heard me talk about the stories of Jerry, people he's met. Apparently there's one guy that he's met that I don't know about. Yeah, I think he might have one more in the hopper, but he's flown, not when they were President Reagan, but President Ford, Peter Secchia, John Denver, and the list goes on and on and on. Yeah, Shaq signed a basketball for him, gave him a basketball. I think that's here somewhere, right there. He flew the Orlando Magic. back in the 90s, the Voss family, Vanando family's flown a lot of his very important people, but I think he'll tell you that they're just the same. They're the same. But enough of me, so I'll have a nice round of applause for Jerry Lanning.
Just real quickly here, if I have a hunch there's some guys in this room that Cal has asked to speak. I will just let you know he's patient, but he won't let up. So you might as well just say yes, you know, get it over with. And my downfall was this winter when I was over at White Lake with Cal when Mike Skipper, the judge from Berry County, was speaking, and Mike's wrap up was a challenge to say yes to things where there's a quiet nudge from God to say, do something good, do something that will uplift somebody, do something that will encourage somebody, and just say yes, because it's probably not the enemy, or it probably is the enemy if it's not good, and if it is good, it's probably God nudging you. So we went to breakfast after that gathering with Cal, and I just said, okay, Cal, in front of the judge here, I'm going to say yes. And I wish I'd have had Ariel there to take some pictures of that, because Cal just about fell out of his chair. He was going, what? And he says, when are we going to do this? I said, well, your brother, where is he? Said he wanted to be here, and so we decided to do it in the summertime. So here I am. I'm going to jump into this thing quickly. This whole adventure started in 1966 when there was a blizzard in South Dakota, where I was raised, that left 40-foot snowdrifts on the open prairie. And a long story, I wound up getting involved with a civil defense operation. I was in an emergency operations center answering phones, keeping track of bulldozers and trucks and things. And one of the people that we had contact with very frequently was a local business guy. He was a funeral director, ambulance service, had an airplane, and he would always talk to us when he was going out flying. And of course, one of the very first things that got opened up was the airport. So, and this guy had a crazy knack of being able to land on roads, open fields, places that, even though there was a lot of snow, there were places where the wind had blown and had left places open. So he'd go flying and he'd call us and talk to us. Well, after about 3 or 4 days of this, he came down into the operations center and he asked this 16-year-old kid if he wanted to go for an airplane ride. And of course I said yes. And that started me down a trail that I had no clue about at the moment. Started taking flying lessons in my little old hometown in a fabric-covered airplane called a Piper Super Cub. Tandem seating, one pilot in front of the other, and that's where it started. Wound up. Can I scoot this back just a little bit, Cal? Thank you. Just say yes. Anyhow, I headed for college, South Dakota State University, and continued my flying lessons there. Got a private license, wound up with a couple hundred hours of flying time before the adventure really took off. I thought I was going into something in the farming world. I was majoring in mechanized agriculture, but I was having more fun than I was paying attention to studying. And I knew I was going to fail a class, and it was better to drop a class at that time than it was to fail it. So I dropped a class, not realizing that I was inadvertently became a part-time student. This was Vietnam era, late 60s, and there was a draft. It wasn't a lottery or anything. It was just a straight-out draft, and I knew that it would only take them a matter of months. I figured 6 maximum before they would find me and draft me. Had a couple of friends who had been through what they called a warrant officer flight training program, and they got a hold of me and said, don't let them draft you. Join up, join for the warrant officer flight training program. And so that's exactly what I did. Wound up learning how to fly helicopters. Again, kind of inadvertently, I wound up being the honor graduate of that class. I was the top #1 student there. And as a result of that, I had an opportunity to take any additional training in any area that the Army offered. And there was gunships, the Cobras then, and there was medevac, and there were several other options. But I chose to take the CH-47 Chinook, which was the big boy, still is the big boy. So that was a fun aircraft to fly. I really enjoyed flying the Chinook. And yes, I was fortunate. Larry and I had a good conversation about the crash that he was in Vietnam. And that was a control issue with the aircraft. But anyhow, that was a good thing. I enjoyed the Chinook a lot. Out of Chinook school, I got assigned, interestingly enough, to South Korea instead of Vietnam. So I was sent to it was still a short tour, but it was essentially a non-combat zone. There was not open hostility and a lot of gunfire. Did some really interesting stuff there with regard to missions. Had one of my favorite ones to talk about was in support of our own troops. At the time, we had 50,000 U.S. Army troops in Korea. And I had one remote base that we went to frequently. It was an artillery base. It was actually a missile site where they had nuclear missiles. And these guys were in the boondocks. I mean, out on one of the coasts of South Korea, and they were in the boonies. And this staff sergeant said, Mr. Lind, any chance, I need a generator here really bad. And I can't get one. The Army requisition process is putting me off. And so, but I know where there's a generator sitting that I don't think anybody else knows is sitting there. And I happen to have a helicopter that will lift that generator. And I said, Sarge, I tell you what, I'll give you a sling, and if you rig it, I'll get it here. About 2 weeks later or so, I got a message, the package is ready. We went and got his generator, and you'd have thought I gave that man $1 million because he got a generator. And those are the kinds of stories that I had in Korea, where we were not in combat, but we were supporting people that were our own. They were our guys, our troops. We also worked with the Korean Army, and got a couple stories about that I'm going to save for maybe another time. But it's about the efficiency of what aircraft could do for people, and the Chinook was a fun one to do it with. Left Korea, came to a stateside assignment at Fort Hood, Texas, where I became an instrument instructor. And interesting enough, at Fort Hood, Texas, now in the early 70s, Vietnam was still going, winding down, but still going, and they were training for desert warfare at Fort Hood, Texas. And so I kind of, you look back on that, and somebody somewhere in power knew where those next wars were going to be. So that was kind of an interesting deal. Out of that, I had an opportunity to get on with a company called Executive Jet Aviation, and that was my step into the fixed-wing business jet world. They had 12 Learjets, 2 Falcons. I wound up training with them as kind of an experiment. They had never trained a rotary wing pilot to fly a Learjet. They agreed to take me on. And as a result of that training, I was offered a job there. So that was fun. Again, I got to fly some fun airplanes while I was in my career here. The Learjet was one of them. That aircraft was designed by some Swiss engineers who had worked on a fighter airplane, And that's what Bill Lear wanted when he envisioned a business jet. And he designed that as a fighter airplane. I had one of my instructors when I was learning to fly the Lear, was an F-105 pilot, which was one of the hot rods in that time of Vietnam. And he told me that he could take a Learjet and make it apples to apples, i.e. no afterburners and no supersonic, and he could out dogfight any fighter aircraft in the inventory with a Learjet. Whoa, now we're talking. And this guy was pretty cool. It was fun to learn from him. I mean, this airplane would climb routinely to 41,000 feet in 15 minutes, which is really quick. And I climbed one time to 41,000 feet in 7.5 minutes. So it was a hot rod. It was fun to fly. It's kind of one of the places where I started to get a few of these celebrities that Cal's been after me about. I did fly John Denver. He was a cool guy to fly. I flew him 2 or 3 times. Flew guys like Ted Kennedy. I've flown Ronald Reagan when he was doing some political stuff before he was president. I've flown John Glenn, the astronaut. Some of you, if you're baseball fans, would know the name George Steinbrenner. He's the owner of the Yankees. And I will tell you, George was a pain in the ass. And we usually flew him for his shipbuilding business, not for his baseball stuff. But he was not a fun guy to fly. If we got an assignment for that, nobody wanted it. Had Gale Sayers and Howard Cosell on the airplane one night together. That was an interesting experience for sure. How am I doing on that? Have I got a name yet that you haven't heard?
I didn't know John Glenn.
Oh, okay. And then probably for me at least, the neatest guy that I was around while I was at Executive Jet was a fellow named Paul Tibbets. And none of you may know that name, but he was the guy that flew the bomber that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. And he was a really interesting guy to be around. And he was the vice president of operations at Executive Jet. I was employed by them, so as a result, I got a chance to learn to know him, flew several missions with him, and he was a neat guy. So is that a name maybe that you didn't know either? Okay. I've hit one of my goals today. Cal said you got to come up with somebody that I haven't heard about, but Paul Tibbets was a fun experience. Learned a little bit about how these airplanes provide efficiency for business. And the story I'll tell you this morning is that we were flying a guy from, I think it was Mansfield, Ohio, to a New York airport, probably Teterboro. And it was like 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night. And I'm just a kid, you know, and this is a business guy getting on this airplane at 10:30 at night. And I do know, because I work there, that this stuff is expensive. It's really high priced compared to buying an airline ticket. Well, I decided to be bold, and I asked this guy, I said, do you mind? I said, teach this young guy about how it is that you justify the expense of this airplane to take you home to New York tonight. He said, well, you asked me at the right time, young man. He said, I was in meetings today with my competitors, with a customer that were all trying to get their business. And he said about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they all started watching their clocks because they had airlines to catch, places to go, people to see. And he said, I just sat there and relaxed because I knew this airplane would be waiting for me at 10:30 tonight. And I took those guys out to dinner. We talked some more. And in my briefcase, I have a contract for $5 million worth of business. That's how we justify this expense. Learned about efficiency that an airplane provides and creates for the business world. Wound up leaving them oh, and by the way, don't shout me down. I was in Columbus, Ohio. But I did learn what a fan meant in Columbus, Ohio. My next door neighbor was a fan of Ohio State, and that was Woody Hayes' days. And I learned that fan was short for fanatic, and Joe was a fanatic, and that was another experience for another time. But I came to Michigan to fly for the Amway Corporation, which was a very interesting thing. And at the time, they had 2 airplanes. They had 2 Jetstars, they were called. It was started as a military executive transport airplane. It had 2 engines. They realized pretty quickly that with 2 engines, it was underpowered. And so why not? The military, what do you think they did? They just put 2 more engines on it, right? So now we got a 4-engine airplane, but fuel tanks are now too small. So they slapped a couple of big fuel tanks on the wings and outwall a Jetstar. And we were flying a civilian version of that. Why 2 of them? Because with Amway, had Rich DeVos, Jay Van Andel, and company policy was that they couldn't fly on the same airplane together. And they frequently had to be in the same place for their Amway meetings and the things that went on. So we had 2 airplanes so that those guys never flew together. Learned more again about business efficiency that an airplane creates. And I think one of the favorite stories I have in that era was we took a team of folks out one day. They were getting ready to market a smoke detector in their catalog business. And they were looking for a vendor to build and supply that smoke detector. We took a team of 4 people out. We went to 5 locations in 3 days. And at the end of the 3rd day, on the way home, they're in a confined cabin now where they have privacy. They're able to converse freely with each other. They hit the ground in Grand Rapids and already had their recommendation for what was going to happen. They'd chosen the vendor, knew what they were going to tell the company, and was ready to go. And that was in 3 days. And as a result of that, they had 2 more days, the next Thursday, Friday, to do other business in the office. They told me that if they had done this on the airlines, that it would have taken 5 days and they would have only got to 4 vendors. Business aircraft efficiency again. You very rarely can justify the expense based on cost only. You have to look at what does it accomplish for you? What does it do for you? What airports do you get to that are close? What are the in my next job at Universal, we had a spot we went to. We were 10 minutes from a big plant that was treating lumber, and it was a 2.5-hour drive to the nearest airline airport. So here we are again with business aircraft efficiency. One of the things I did with Amway was we sponsored an IndyCar. Some of you may know the name Scott Brayton, who was killed in an IndyCar, drove for Dick Simon Racing, and that was an interesting time to get around that group of people in the IndyCar world. That was something that I became really good friends with the chaplain on that circuit, who always kind of wondered, he was a racer, he wondered why he got called to IndyCars, because he had never been an IndyCar driver. He'd driven about everything else under the sun, but he never drove an IndyCar. And once he got there, he realized that it was because all the guys that were there driving IndyCars were the guys that he had been competing against in some of the other circuits. And he knew most of those people when he became their chaplain. And Hunter operated on, here comes some of the money in that world. A blown engine, one blown engine in an IndyCar would have been Hunter's budget for a year. He had trouble getting most of those guys to donate $100 to him, but one blown engine was his budget for a year. So that was kind of an interesting time. Drop another name on you, Paul Harvey. Did I tell you about that? Yeah. Flew Paul Harvey. Probably one of the few guys that can say that I saw Paul Harvey with his pants down. Now I better explain that. We picked him up late at night. He'd been at an event in Florida, and they were trying to get him to an Amway event. I don't know, it was in Texas or someplace. And the only way he could get there to speak was if we brought him with the airplane. So we had gone to wherever it was in Florida, picked him up. He's tired, got on the airplane, said, "I am worn out, boys." He says, "I don't want to wrinkle my pants, so I'm going to pull my pants off, hang them over the back of that seat, cover up with a blanket, and take a nap while you take me to Texas." So we flew a pantless Paul Harvey to Texas. But, and that's the rest of that story. Then Cal has brought up the Orlando Magic. I did get to do that toward the end of my Amway career. They had an airplane, it was called a Bach 111. In today's airline world, it would have been a small airliner. In airline configuration, it was probably 83 to 85 passengers. And we had two of them, of course. And each one of them was set up for 23 passengers, and the other one was set up for 25 passengers. And then what they didn't carry in passengers, they added fuel tanks, so we had more range with the airplane. And I was flying that, and because the DeVos family, RDV Sports, bought the Orlando Magic, we worked out a deal to take one of the Amway airplanes and do some flying for the Orlando Magic basketball team. That was the year that Shaq was a rookie. And that was interesting. And I have a memento from that to Jerry from Shaquille O'Neal, number 32. And the to Jerry probably decreases its value. Seriously. A ball that simply has his autograph on it that can be authenticated is pretty pricey. But the to Jerry means way more to me than the price of that ball. This ball has no price tag on it, but it's a fun thing for me to have and to remember. Shaq was a pretty cool guy. He was pretty down to earth. He was built. He was probably about 4% body fat, 7'1", I think it was. And one of my favorite stories about Shaquille was we often got invited as aircrew to be with them at some of the, when we were away. They did what they called a shoot around. It was a warm up and a kind of a semi-practice for a game in the evening. And they were at a shoot around in a college gymnasium. And we had a Sports Illustrated crew with us. There was two guys, and they were doing a story on Shaq. So they were traveling with us for a couple of days. And Shaq is standing, a guy named Lenny Courier, who was the trainer on the Orlando Magic team. And Lenny and I had a good relationship. He did all of the travel scheduling. And so Lenny and I often talked, and we were pretty good friends. Shaq is standing there talking to the Sports Illustrated guys, and he says, in earshot, we could hear him saying, "You want me to go tear that rim down for you for some pictures for your story?" And Lenny's eyes got about this big, and he went right over there and said, "Shaq, no. And Shaq had been signed for $14 million for 4 years. I think that's the number. And he said, "We can't afford to have you get injured tearing down a basketball rim for pictures." Walked back over to me, and Shaq was agreeable to that. He was cool. Walked back over to me and says, "And here's the deal, Jerry. He could have done that very easily. Not a problem. He could have taken that rim right down." And then, of course, we've probably all seen the videos of him taking down rims in NBA stadiums and shattering that glass. He was a big boy. He was a strong boy, and he could take down a rim. And it changed how they built basketball backboards and rims in the NBA when Shaq started breaking those things. So that that was kind of a fun time. How am I doing here? To me, a cool guy that I got to meet while I was flying the Orlando Magic was a young man named Mike Stevens. And Mike was the mascot for the team, and he had developed the mascot theme of Stuff the Magic Dragon. They're playing in Orlando, of course, which is Disney country. And now he is Stuff the Magic Dragon, and he got to develop that. Christian guy. And his story was, to make it way short, was he had trained to be an actor. He wanted to be in Hollywood. And but he realized that as his training was going on that he couldn't function as a Christian in that world. And he wound up being a professional mascot for athletic teams. At the time that this all started to evolve, he was the mascot for the Philadelphia 76ers. And Pat Williams was the general manager, who was also a strong Christian guy. And Pat was asked to come to Orlando to be the general manager of the Orlando Magic when they came on into the NBA as an expansion team. And Pat asked Mike to come with him to Orlando to develop a mascot theme. And he was so funny and so much fun to be around him. But one of his parts of his story was how friends would always say, "Mike, you're so lucky. You just have so much luck to be doing what you're doing." And he said, "I struggled with that because, us Christian guys, we don't really believe in luck, do we?" And so he was talking to the Lord about that, and he said it was about 3 a.m, and he was working on a routine, and it was quiet, and God spoke to him really quietly. He says, "Just take a minute, Mike." He says, "The fact is, you do have luck. It's an acronym for the love and understanding of Christ, your King." Whoa, and Mike said it changed my whole world. And he said, now, and then God said, now you can tell people when they talk to you about how lucky you are, you can let them know the luck that you have in your world. And so that was cool to have a relationship with Mike. And needless to say, when we were at home in Orlando, they always gave us tickets. And frequently, if we had friends that wanted to come with us, we'd get a couple extra tickets. And I can tell you that if you were sitting next to me at an Orlando Magic game at home, you were likely to get popcorn dumped on your head or something. But I mean, that guest of mine became a target of Stuff the Magic Dragon. So fun time. Left Amway, not because I wanted to leave Amway, but because I wanted to chase a dream in South Dakota. Wanted to get back to my roots. Had an opportunity to buy a crop spraying business out there about 40 miles from my hometown. And the guy that owned the crop spraying business in my hometown was a high school classmate of mine. And so he knew that this business was going to be for sale, wanted me to come out and take a look at it. He knew I wanted to get back to South Dakota. And so I went, but I had to leave Amway to do it. Long story short is that business deal collapsed for lots of reasons, didn't work out. But I did spray for most of the season, and it was a very unique experience. To be now flying, you never got above 300 feet above the ground. And I'm used to being at 30 or 40,000 feet all the time, and now all of a sudden I'm only 300 feet above the ground. And a good majority of that time was really spent about 3 feet above the ground, while you're doing the spraying runs. One of the places where I know God's hand was on me, it was my very first spray run that was live. I'd done some training with water, but now we're out and we actually have chemical on the airplane, and we're first spray pass in the field. And I'm kind of in a little bit of a downhill sloping field, and I didn't pull up quite enough at the end, and I took out a barbed wire fence, my first pass. And I knew I had hit the fence, and I could look out and I could see on the landing gear of the airplane I was trailing some barbed wire, knocked a couple of nozzles off the spray boom. So I had to work my way back to the airport where we worked from and untangle some wire and fix some spray nozzles and things like that. But that was quite the training experience. Another kind of a fun thing that was flying under power wires. I learned and was taught that if you were going to fly under the wires, which sometimes was way more efficient when you were spraying a field, but the way you knew that you were under the wires was that if you could see them above the horizon, the airplane was low enough to go under them. If they weren't above the horizon, you better find another way out because you were going to hit the wires. So that was an interesting time. Came back from that and wound up at Universal Forest Products. I got a call from the network from a friend of mine at the airport. Said, "Jerry, I know you're looking for work. You ought to check in on Universal Forest Products." Said, "I just heard a rumor that they fired their chief pilot, and I think it's true because he's the one who told me." So I wound up taking over that flight department, and the CEO at the time said, "You have two tasks here." He said, "We know that we let this guy he was known for doing some dangerous things. He had really lost the safety aspect of his world. And then he got tangled up in another mess, and that pushed him to let him go." But so Bill said to me, "You need to make it safe, and you need to get us into a jet airplane." They at the time had a Cessna turboprop that was a pretty good airplane, but that was their needs were greater. They needed more speed and more range. So the safety side of it came home to me. A couple of years later, we were at an event. I think it was a Christmas party. Wives had been invited. It was a big party. And I had a couple of wives come up to me quietly and privately and look me in the eye and say, "We are so glad that you're here, Jerry, because we're not afraid anymore for our husbands to get on the airplane." Mission accomplished. I knew that we had gotten where they wanted us to be with the safety aspect. And it took us about 6 months to get them into a jet airplane. We found an aircraft that would fly anywhere in the United States without stopping for fuel. It was fairly fast, and it was a good transition for them. We had a good ride there. Finished my career there in Cessna's flagship airplane called a Citation 10. And that was a fun aircraft to fly. I got to fly some fun airplanes in my career. I think I have 7 or 8 type ratings, but the Learjet and the Citation 10 were the most fun. The Citation 10 was fun because it was fast. At the time, it was the fastest non-military airplane in the world. It would go. And of course, we had some bragging rights, and one of them happened one day. We were taxiing out at Grand Rapids. Amway with one of their airplanes was taking off. They had already lifted off. As we're taxiing out, they're going this way. And it turned out we were both going to the same general area on the West Coast. But they had a pretty good head start on us because we were still taxiing, and we got out there, well, about, I don't know, somewhere over Nebraska. We overtook that aircraft. And trust me, our CEO had bragging rights now over Rich DeVos. And that was a fun one. Couple other names. Gerald Ford. While I flew for Amway, I got to fly Gerald Ford after he was president, and had the opportunity to have a couple of short conversations with him. He was in a waiting area at the Teterboro Airport while we were waiting for the principal to show up for the flight home, and so I had occasion to talk to him. And that was interesting. Flew Nick Saban several times while he was still Michigan State. And he was a very kind and interesting guy to be with. And of course, we didn't have a lot of interaction with him. I could never claim friendship, obviously, because our job was to be professional pilots. We were providing them transportation and their own privacy in the airplane. But we did get occasions to meet those kinds of guys. So, 2015 rolled around and I decided to retire. I was old enough to take Social Security at a full rate, and it just was time. Had about 20,000 hours of flying time when the time came. And it was very interesting. When I retired, it was like we flipped a switch. I enjoyed it right to the end. They did the shower over the top of the airplane as I was taxiing in on my last flight. And it was just turned off. I was just done. They wanted me to stay on as a part-time guy, and I went, some of the things I didn't like about that world was getting that medical, going to training, loading and unloading luggage. And I still had to be doing all that if I was going to fly part-time. And I went, and besides, probably you're going to call me one day and really need a part-time pilot, and I'm going to be in South Dakota in the Black Hills riding my motorcycle. So, so I chose not to do that, and it was just good. We had a motorhome at the time that we had recently acquired, and we got to do some traveling with a motorhome to places that I had been many times with an airplane, and started to get to see the United States from ground level at 60 miles an hour instead of from 41,000 feet at 600 miles an hour. And it was different, and it was fun. I really did enjoy that. We had some great experiences with the motorhome. Cal, I'm trying to watch the clock for you here, dude. We're doing okay, huh? And it turned out that retirement was probably tribute to God, because not long after that happened, this was in about now in 2015, in February of 2016, we were in Florida with the motorhome, and I had a real severe heart attack, but I had no symptoms. I had just a little tiny, about the size of a quarter, discomfort in the center of my chest. Didn't feel good. I was squirmy. I just felt uneasy and decided I should probably go get this checked. And I was in the ER less than 10 minutes, and an ER doc put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Mr. Lind, don't want to alarm you right now, but from what we can see here, you're in the middle of a really serious heart attack." Of course, my eyes got big. I went, "What? That's just nuts. I have no symptoms." And he said, "Well, that's what we see." And then I realized how serious it was as they rushed me to a catheter lab, and about 6 people, I'm laying on a stretcher, and about 6 people went and started, it was just like this. And I kind of rolled my eyes toward heaven. I went, "Well, Lord, I guess if this is it, I'm ready. I wouldn't choose now, but if this is it, I'm ready." I woke up in an intensive care unit. I was there for, 12 or 14 hours. They put in 2 stents to stabilize me. And then a day or 2 later, they did 2 more stents on a staged basis and let me out of the hospital. And 2 days after that, I was attending a World of Outlaws race in Florida, but we realized, and they told me, if you had not come in, you probably would not have lived through the night. And if I had been somewhere in a corporate airplane, in a hotel room, in Moultrie, Georgia, I would have died that night, because I would not have paid attention to that. God's hand, he had something else yet for me to do. I haven't figured that all out yet, but this is part of it, Cal. One of the things that I'd like to share with you about that is, and I'm going to give you a little experience from an event called The Return. You've heard various guys around here, they know about The Return. Got some shirts here. Yeah, there it is. and I had the opportunity to be at A Return, and it's another one of those just say yes moments. My friend Robert is sitting over there, and we were talking. In fact, it was at this place, Robert, after somebody had spoken and we were having breakfast, and I said, you know, I should probably consider doing a return sometime. That sounds really interesting. He said, well, just go do it. Go sign up and tell me when it's done. Okay, so I went and signed up and texted him that it's done, and I wound up at A Return. And without giving you too much, so I don't spoil any surprises, but one of the things that they do there is they've prayed over you and worked on you about lots of issues. And one of the things that happens is that they give you a card where they've been praying for a group of men, and these guys have no idea who they're praying for. They're simply praying for number 7 of a group of guys. So my little pod, I was number 7, and they were simply praying for number 7. Had no clue who I was or what my story was. And somebody wrote, draw near to Papa. You have a powerful story to share. Papa is not done with you. He is not done because he loves you too much. And I went, well, that's pretty easy to write about just anybody, right? Except this guy had doodled on my card, and you probably can't see it real well, but in the corner there's a scribble of a fixed-wing aircraft and a helicopter. He had no clue, but here is a word from God. You have some stuff to be about yet. You need to be saying yes, Jerry. And that's a really cool moment for me, a very precious memory and part of my story. My Christian walk was kind of crazy. I was raised a Lutheran, and I was a good Lutheran, let me tell you. I had a Sunday school pin that went from here to here. And I wish I'd looked for it, Cal. I thought I could find it, but I couldn't find it. But I had a Sunday school pin that proved that I was a good Lutheran. I had been at all those Sunday school classes. Kind of dropped out of that world when I got to the military. Got to messing around, doing some things that will be for another time. But it wasn't good. And then during a real ugly divorce in 1985, I went to an event in downtown Grand Rapids called the Live 85. And I knew that I was being called forward that day to accept the Lord as my Savior and as my Lord. And I was too proud to admit that was the first time that I was doing that. I was going to recommit my life. But the reality it was the first time that I had said, I'm yours, Lord, and this is it. We're going to mean business now. So that was in 1985. Think about that. That's 40 years ago. Holy moly. That's been a ride. Kept trying to learn, kept trying to get better. You know, one of those things where we're all kind of pushing toward performing for God. You have to perform for God. Well, through a set of circumstances, I got to meet a guy named John Lynch, not the Seattle Seahawks John Lynch, but a public speaker, John Lynch. And he had a talk called Two Roads, Two Rooms. And he taught me, and I got, because of my flying career, he lived in Phoenix. I got to meet John, and then we have over time become good personal friends. But he taught me that the way you please God the most is by trusting Him. That's what pleases Him. And it's not about my self-effort, but it's about simply trusting Him in your day-to-day circumstances, in your walk, and while I was kind of struggling with this message and the opportunity to talk here and still wanting to step into that performance world, I came across something. A friend sent me something, had no clue that I was talking here today, and I'll just, it was long, but I picked a couple of sentences out of it which were very encouraging to me. Cal knew that I was really struggling with this thing. And here was the comment. It says, I was worried that I was way behind in my spiritual growth at this point in my life. What am I missing? What am I not hearing? What am I not doing right? And the answer came. Where you are is good. Only when you see yourself as far behind are you moving ahead. I went, whoa, God is calming me down, saying, you're right on time. Everything is okay. I got you. I'm with you. And it went on to say, your frustration with everything, especially yourself, makes it possible to turn toward deeper dependence on me, capital M. Your weariness requires the strength of supernatural love to continue serving me, capital M. Your haunting sense of futility shuts you to a kind of endurance that can be sustained only with hope in my Son's return. God's there. He's encouraging. He's there with you. Kel, I'm going to look at the clock one more time because I have something I'd like to share. This is from John Lynch. Maybe a word of encouragement to somebody. It's called the New Testament Gamble, and it's kind of out of context, and I don't have time to explain it, but it's called the New Testament Gamble, something he wrote a lot of years ago. And I'd like to read that for you. Of course, I had it right here marked. Well, maybe I won't be reading it to you because I thought I had it marked here. New Testament Gamble. What if I tell them that who they are now? What if I tell them who they now are? What if I take away any element of fear? What if I tell them that I'll always love them, that I love them right now as much as I love my only son? What if I tell them there are no logs of past offenses, of how little they pray or how often they've let me down? What if I tell them they are actually righteous right now? What if I tell them that I'm crazy about them? What if I tell them that if I'm their Savior, they're going to go to heaven no matter what? It's a done deal. What if I tell them that they have a new nature, that they're saints, not saved sinners? And what if I tell them that I actually live in them now, my love, my power, and my nature at their disposal? What if I tell them they don't have to put on masks, that they don't need to pretend that we're close? What if they knew that when they mess up, I would never, ever retaliate? What if they were convinced that bad circumstances aren't my way of evening the score? What if they knew the basis of our friendship isn't how little they sin, but how much they allow me to love them? What if I tell them that they can hurt my heart, but I'll never hurt theirs? And what if I tell them they can open their eyes when they pray and still go to heaven? What if I tell them there's no secret agenda, no trapdoor? What if I tell them that it isn't about their self-effort, but about allowing me to live my life through them? through most of my Christian walk until 2003 or 4 or 5, in that area, I felt like I was serving a tyrant God, that he was always mad at somebody and always killing somebody because they weren't doing well. And I was that dog in the dog and hare and hound race. That, no matter how fast that dog runs, they will never catch that rabbit. That was me. Till God got a hold of me and showed me how much his love for me was overpowering of anything else in my world, and that you're always right on time. I'm right there with you through all of the crap that you've been through all of the times when you were failing badly. I was there with you. I knew, and I knew about all of it since before the beginning of time, and I'm with you. And you are not a failure. You're my son. You're a kid of the kingdom. And so with that, I'm out of time. I know that in my notes, as I kind of looked through some stuff that I have done at various men's events, one thing kept popping up over and over and over and over. Was in my notes. I kept writing, keep on. This is a word of encouragement to all of you. Keep on. Keep going. Don't quit. Just say yes. That's all I got.
Nice job. Yeah. Wasn't that bad, was it?
I don't know. We'll find out. They aren't throwing anything yet, but
Tell you what, thanks everybody for being here. If you got some questions, stop by and see Jerry. He'll be here for a while. He'll have some answers for you. Yeah, it wasn't that bad. You did a great job. Proud of you for saying yes, because we've had this talk.
and for those of you that
5+
Cal's been
years.
after, just say yes, because he'll keep coming.
Yeah, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming. Great turnout, 50 guys this morning, younger guys. It was great to see you guys. I see you driving all the way from Alto by yourself and leaving your dad and your brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, what's up?
Guy, how about that?
Yeah, the young guy that comes by himself. Yeah.
Dave.
Yep. So thanks again. We'll see you in July. Have a great day.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.